Good afternoon. My name is Alexandra Campbell Ferrari, and I'm the Executive Director for the Center for Water Security and Cooperation. We're really excited to have this incredible brain trust of folks who have worked on green infrastructure and actually delivered on green infrastructure projects in communities within the Mississippi River Watershed. So, just to provide a little bit of context, my organization, the Center for Water Security and Cooperation, is leading an effort to create an interstate water compact for the Mississippi River. And as part of that, we're also building a regional network of people, laws, and policies to support not only the development of that interstate water compact, but the implementation. And as part of that, we are identifying opportunities where local leaders and tribal leaders and state legislators can identify different ways in which to better manage water resources. One of the challenges that many communities face in the watershed is flooding and draining issues. And so having Barbara as a friend and a colleague, I thought there's no one better to speak to the benefits and opportunities presented by green infrastructure. So I'm going to kick it over to her, but just want to thank the panelists for being here today and encourage any attendees to put their questions in the Q&A.
All right, well, thanks, Alexandra. It's really our pleasure to be here today. I'm going to share my screen. What we are hoping to do here today is to do what we do best as an organization, and that is share the expertise of our members. So and we have three members here today from across the Mississippi watershed, starting at the top with Minneapolis, moving down to St. Louis, and then down the Mississippi Delta with New Orleans. Uh, so first, a little bit about our organization. It's not advancing. Huh. Bear with me, a little technical difficulty here. The Exchange is a cross-sector social impact network and community of practice that seeks to activate local governments in the US and Canada to implement GSI equitably. We believe success depends upon getting different cultures together to collaborate, particularly the different sectors concerned with scaling GSI, which is exactly what we are trying to do as an organization. And this photo from last year's annual meeting in Cleveland does better than any chart I can show you about speaking to who we are. We're a mix of practitioners from the private, local government, nonprofit, and education sectors who are working together on the challenges of stormwater and urban heat. Our theory of change has three pillars, and the heart of these is providing support for scaling the equitable implementation of GSI. And key to that effort is our Framework of GSI Practice, the North Star for our small but mighty organization. The framework is both a primer on what our members believe a municipality or a utility needs to do to create a strong GSI program, and an online living compendium of principles, best practices, and case studies available to practitioners across sectors. Scanning the QR code here will take you to the page on our website where you can find this overview and detail on the completed chapters. With that bit of grounding behind us, we can move to a discussion of the framework and the chapters that our speakers are going to address today. So we're just briefly going to go over some principles, and then we're going to hear about each of the four circled here in some fashion from the presenters. The framework is organized like the face of a clock, and if you're using it to build a strong local government GSI program, you should proceed clockwise around the circle, beginning with establishing a vision that represents the shared values of all the people you will need for your program to succeed. Once you have them on board, you can create the policies, get the funding, and build the workforce you need which then allows you to successfully deliver the solutions on flooding and heat that communities around the US and Canada are clamoring for. But the main point here is that you can't plan, design, build, or maintain if you haven't first got your people on board, your community leaders, your mayors, for example, your utility leaders, your community members, the staff across departments within your municipality, whose help you're going to definitely need. The first overarching goal in this framework is to establish a shared vision, which includes centering equity, advancing sustainability, and building buy-in. By centering equity, we mean getting leadership commitment to centering community, developing and implementing a community collaboration strategy, delivering benefits that align with community values, and, where possible, building community wealth through programs like workforce development. Next, we move to advancing sustainability, which involves integrating resilience into policies and regulations, engaging in the public in planning, siting, and design of GSI, and planning, designing, operating, and maintaining for resilience. Finally, in creating a shared vision, we need to build buy-in, meaning integrating audience preferences into our strategic vision, partnering with and elevating champions, implementing demonstration projects, activating public relations channels, and finally, advancing effective regulation. The last piece of the framework that we will touch on today is fund, a highly important part of all of this. And we need to take a diversified approach by combining local revenue sources, such as stormwater fees, with public financing such as clean water state revolving funds. We also want to coordinate with other departments so as to integrate GSI into their projects and maximize funding. I think Justin's going to speak to that a little bit today. With that bit of context in place, I'll turn it over to Grace Vogel from the Sewerage and Water Board of New Orleans.
Hello, thank you for the introduction, Barbara. So I will be talking about community engagement, but first I want to give kind of an overview of drainage in New Orleans, how it's all set up, and why that's important as a backdrop to GSI. So you can, next slide. So I'm a landscape architect. I live in New Orleans. I've been here for about 15 years. I'm originally from Illinois. I moved down and started doing residential landscape and commercial and realized green infrastructure and stormwater management is so much more interesting and also is a way to give back to my community as a public servant working for our local water utility. Next slide. So I have lived in the Mississippi watershed my whole life. I grew up on the Mississippi in the Quad Cities in Illinois, and then it has a special place in my heart, so I followed it all the way down to the Delta. Next slide. So I'll start wide and narrow down before I talk about our community buy-in. So New Orleans is located in the southeastern toe of Louisiana. It's situated between the river to the south and Lake Pontchartrain to the north. The Orleans Parish jurisdiction is what's highlighted here in yellow. The city of Orleans encompasses the entire parish. There are no other municipalities within, unlike how other neighboring parishes or counties are set up. Next slide. The regional watershed that we focus on here and contribute to is the Lake Pontchartrain Basin, seen here. Next slide. I specify that we contribute to the Lake Pontchartrain Basin because we don't receive much from it, as the hurricane protection system that the Army Corps of Engineers constructed after Katrina completely levees in the greater New Orleans area from receiving waters, as shown here. Next slide. Let's back up for a second, though, and talk about how we got here. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean that as a slide. For thousands of years prior to For thousands of years prior to and during the initial years of European settlement, several Native American tribes lived along the areas of high ground on the natural levees of the river and also along the geological ridges of the distributaries. In 1718, the French built a permanent settlement on the high ground adjacent to the Mississippi River. It's only 14 feet above sea level. So as a result of this, the city was subject to flooding from the Mississippi River, from the lake, and also just rain in general. Next slide. So this is a comparison of that red rectangle is the French Quarter, as we call it, and it's still that same refers to that same 4 by 11 block initial settlement, and this is how it looks compared to the current built environment. Next slide. So an 1890 map of New Orleans from an LSU professor here compares the where they had settled out only about 150 years after that first settlement. And compared to the next slide, Barbara, you'll see that they were still just following the what the Native Americans did, following that high ground where they could, make a life for themselves. Next slide. This is an exaggerated cross section that shows how the elevation of the city has settled. The river is naturally higher than the lake to the north, which is why all of our canals lead to the lake in the north. This graphic was created a few years ago when the river was high and we were expecting a tropical storm. But I use this to show where the sea level line is compared to the populated areas of the city. That's why we were protected by these man-made levees, because we live in a bowl. Next slide. So back in 1870, before all that, a surveyor from New Orleans warned that heavy storms are going to push that storm surge back from the lake up the canals into the city, because we have no way to stop them now that we've opened up these passageways. So they created a master drainage plan in 1896 and created the Sewage and Water Board utility. In 1899, we hired a 2-lane engineering graduate that created the pumps that we still use today. His name is Baldwin Wood. It's a wood screw pump. They installed 11 of them in 1915 for a total cost of $159,000, which is only fit about 5 million today, still steel. Next slide. These pumps are pretty simple. They use a powerful siphon action to lift the water into the drainage canals where it flows by gravity further on to Lake Pontchartrain. So it's really just a straw with a fan in the middle. You need to have both sides submerged to make it work. And it keeps going until the water gets too low. Next slide. Today, there are 24 drainage pump stations collectively housing 99 of those pumps. Our network includes 90 miles of open canals and 90 miles of subsurface canals, many of those of which are large enough to drive a bus through. Next slide. Now that we have a base understanding of how we engineered gray infrastructure to inhabit New Orleans, let's talk about nature-based solutions or approaches to stormwater management. Green infrastructure is an approach to stormwater management that mimics nature by soaking up and storing water using vegetation, soils, and natural processes to create a healthier urban environment. We know we need to work with nature, not against it, to live with water. Next slide. Along with the city, so we're separate from the city as the water utility. We've been funding green infrastructure projects in flood-prone areas. With the amount of rain we get, we will always need canals and pumps, but green infrastructure is an important piece of the puzzle. Next slide. One of the key components of why we care about green infrastructure is improving our water quality, as we are the holder of our EPA MS4 stormwater permit. So this is a major problem in New Orleans. We are unable to treat our stormwater through our sewer system. They're completely separate systems. We get on average 68 inches of water per year that would completely overwhelm our sewer system. But by using green infrastructure and retaining rainfall where it lands, it allows us to naturally reduce flooding and improve the water quality at the same time for our surrounding water bodies. Next slide. Okay, the real reason I'm presenting. One of the most successful ways to implement decentralized green infrastructure where it is most needed, regardless if it resides on our property or public property, is to support the work of our community-based organizations that are already doing it. CBOs in New Orleans run deep, and they are fiercely passionate about the city and their neighborhoods. They know every puddle and how the water flows or doesn't flow. 2 CBOs that saw out relationships with our water utility are Healthy Community Services and Groundwork New Orleans. Dr. Angela Chalk with HCS forged a partnership with Sewage and Water Board in 2022 with backing of a grant from the River Network to build trust between utilities and CBOs. Next slide. So that work included tree planting with groundwork, trash boom installation with Osprey in one of our canals in this area, and also outreach in the community. Next slide. Building on our work, I submitted an application to the Green Infrastructure Leadership Exchange for their re-grant in 2023 to continue that work with the same parties in the same areas. Next slide. Halfway through our grant, which this is the amount of trees that we got planted halfway through, a rogue employee of my support services crew had mowed down 100 of the trees Angela and I had planted 3 years prior out of maintenance frustration. The area in question is 2,000 linear feet on a 10-foot wide steep slope canal bank, which is classically maintained with an arm mower on a tractor. We realized we had focused our outreach on the community and skipped over a critical group, our own staff. Next slide. Dr. Chalk learned of the event as it was happening because she lives in that neighborhood. A distraught neighbor sounded an alarm and called and ran over to her house. The phone tree was quick, and the lead supervisor that I communicate with regretfully confirmed that it was our employee that maliciously cut down those trees. Dr. Chalk had many avenues available to her in that moment. The media and the community hold little grace for our water utility and would have loved to blow up that story. But instead, she called the people to action that could make a meaningful change and leverage the catastrophe into new opportunities. So she did this because of the relationship that we had built personally and wisdom that public health was at the root of this. So within a week, this happened on a Monday. By Friday, she brought 6 agencies together in person to acknowledge the situation and present next steps. Tree training for employees, policies, and replanting with a low maintenance solution, making sure we're learning from our own outreach as well. Next slide. Okay, so these are the departments that came together and the path forward. Next slide. Okay. I reached out to Barbara right after that with a request to use the remaining grant funds to pursue the current needs, and I was met with a easy yes, document it. We'll present it multiple times. We'll learn from it. To date, we've trained 40 employees and are planning to capture 200 more from our biggest department next month. The training is a combination of understanding how the environment affects public health, the importance of urban trees within that, how to plant them, how to prune them, how to dig around them, as well as stormwater BMPs, which are important within during all of that work. Next slide. The effort brings together the city's Parks and Parkways Department, our Environmental Affairs Department, and Healthy Community Services to present a well-rounded training that hopes to educate instead of reprimand. It has been well received, and all parties have learned multitudes about each other at each training, including ourselves. This is the first one we did is where we learned what equipment was used and how to maintain these different areas and slopes, and how a different planting layout could work better for everyone. Next slide. So next steps are to coordinate a prescribed burn training, which has gained traction among urban organizations that would like to pursue it, but has been difficult to find a trainer for because much of the state isn't lower marshland, and that's not typically burned the same way timberland is burned. And it's just been kind of a pilot project from beginning to end. After that, once we get that training, we want to establish an urban prairie followed by a tree planting in a clustered design seen here to ease maintenance if mowing, albeit far less frequent, has to become a reality again. We also aim to polish our training materials and digitize them so it's making it feasible for annual repetition of those same employees and also on a larger scale. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. Next, I'll turn to Justin Reynolds from the city of Minneapolis.
Thanks, Barbara. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Justin Reynolds, and I am the Green Infrastructure Coordinator at the City of Minneapolis. And I'll be talking a little bit about how Minneapolis utilizes GSI to advance sustainability and what that looks like whenever we're implementing GSI on our public works projects. Just a little about me. I've just been at the city of Minneapolis for a couple of years. And before that, I was doing consulting work as a civil engineer, doing a lot of green infrastructure work on the East Coast and Philadelphia and New York City. And yeah, originally from Kentucky, so I was in the Mississippi River Watershed, moved out of it for a little bit and decided to come back. Next slide. So just to talk a little bit about why GSI matters in Minneapolis, we've had a pretty big increase in the amount of GSI that we've been implementing over the past few years, mostly as a result of policies that support sustainability and climate resiliency. So there are a few policies that I wanted to highlight, and I'm going to go into a little more detail about these, but this first one here is our city's stormwater management ordinance. So this ordinance requires on-site stormwater management utilizing GSI when there are projects that disturb land areas that are greater than half an acre. And then we've got Minneapolis 2040. That's our city's comprehensive planning guide that's used to guide a lot of our work and also includes goals such as climate change resilience, a clean environment, and healthy, safe, and connected people. And then I also wanted to highlight our transportation action plan, which includes actions to incorporate sustainable design elements on our city infrastructure projects. Minneapolis really focuses on GSI as a tool used not to just meet those regulatory stormwater management requirements, but also to provide all of those secondary benefits that we get from vegetation and trees, such as reducing the urban heat island effect and providing food and habitat for pollinator species and just increasing our overall climate change resilience. Next slide, please. So just to go into a little more detail about our stormwater management ordinance, this policy includes minimizing negative impacts of stormwater runoff and assuring long-term effectiveness of our stormwater management practices, such as GSI. This policy applies to land disturbing activities that are greater than half an acre. And it's been around for private development for a couple of decades now. So Minneapolis does have a lot of private developments with their own GSI. And then that's also incentivized by offering credits on their stormwater utility fees if they have and maintain their GSI properly. So it's not just for private development affected by the ordinance, but also for developments that might want to get a credit for their utility fee. But my focus as the green infrastructure coordinator is really more on the public project side of things. So in January of 2022, this became applicable to our public street reconstruction projects. And before that, it didn't include those, and it was just the private development. So we've got a few design plan requirements for projects that our ordinance applies to. For those disturbing greater than half an acre, they have to have enough GSI to meet our water quality, rate control, and volume control requirements. And then it's also written in the ordinance that GSI must be registered, inspected, and maintained to ensure their long-term function. We have a group of environmental inspectors in our surface water and sewers division that I work pretty closely with, and they take care of that. Next slide, please. So then these other two guiding policies, we've got Minneapolis 2040 and our transportation action plan. So Minneapolis 2040 went into effect of January of 2020. And I just wanted to mention that we have a few policies within there that support sustainability, including climate resilient communities, sustainable water system management, stormwater management, and integration of water management into development. And then our transportation action plan went into effect December of 2020. And this action plan guides a lot of the work that our transportation divisions within Public Works do. And in this action plan, they've outlined a few design strategies for those projects, one being green the streets. So especially for projects that are required to meet our stormwater management ordinance, our transportation planners and engineers are very supportive of utilizing GSI to meet those multiple goals that they have. So just as an example, they have a couple of actions in there. First one being build and maintain stormwater infrastructure into streets using features such as vegetation and bioswales to reduce runoff and treat water prior to entering waterways. And another one is adding greening elements to streetscapes to support the comfort and pleasure of people using the streets as bikeway protection where appropriate, around transit stops and stations, and in high volume pedestrian areas. So this picture I threw in here shows one of our recent projects that included a mid-block crosswalk with some GSI features around it. And then we've got these policies in place to really prioritize GSI on our street projects, but it's obviously one thing to plan, and another thing to see how this actually looks in practice. Next slide, please. So GSI implementation at Minneapolis is really a collaboration across several divisions of public works. My position is housed within the city's surface water and sewers division, which ultimately owns and maintains all of our public GSI. But then I wanted to highlight that a majority of our GSI is actually being constructed as part of our transportation projects. And that has a lot to do with the policies that I was just mentioning. So our transportation planners and our transportation planning and programming division come up with those street reconstruction projects as part of their typical capital improvements plan. And then they also manage the planning phase of those projects, including that community outreach. Then we've got our transportation engineers and our transportation engineering and design division who manage those designs from 30% to final design. And then some of our street projects are constructed by our own city crews in our transportation maintenance and repair division. So whenever a new project comes up, we'll create a core team with representatives from these divisions and a few others, just so the project gets that input from all of the affected divisions throughout the entire planning and design process. And we really put an emphasis on the value from the community and getting all of the divisions involved early on in the process so that we can meet our community's expectations. Funding wise, the GSI costs are split 50-50 between transportation and surface water and sewers. And then we've also had some funding from our watershed management organizations for a few of our projects that include GSI. So with this process, we've really learned a lot about our own preferences for GSI over the past few years since we've been adding a lot of it with the ordinance going into effect on our public projects in 2022. So one of the major things that I've been working on right now is standardization. Standardization for GSI design details, specifications, maintenance plans, and a standard planning process to make the planning and design as smooth as it can be because we've got so many stakeholders on a project and we're reallocating the right of way to a lot of different uses. Like stormwater used to be seen just as this waste product that would be piped away from the site and kind of a bit of an afterthought on our street reconstruction projects. But with GSI, we're adding another street feature, so it's really important to have specific GSI planning guidelines in place so that we can prioritize those sites during the planning phase whenever we're trying to determine where everything is going to go in our limited space in the right of way. Next slide, please. And then I just wanted to highlight one of our recent street reconstruction projects. This one is Bryant Avenue South in South Minneapolis. It was reconstructed in 2022 and 2023. It was a 2.5 mile long residential corridor that was entirely reconstructed. The roadway was narrowed. We added bump outs and chicanes as well as a two-way bike path at sidewalk level. We also planted over 400 trees along the corridor as part of this project. And And this project meets the city's stormwater ordinance requirements with 95 rain gardens and 20 underground infiltration trenches. The rain gardens make up about 25,000 square feet of vegetated space with native plants entirely within the right of way. And then along with those infiltration trenches, we've added about 45,000 square feet or just over an acre of infiltration area for stormwater to soak back into the ground on site and recharge the groundwater. So it all gets treated on site rather than being piped directly to our lakes and the Mississippi River. So this project also meets our city planning goals for climate resilience. It helps to make walking, biking, and rolling a more comfortable experience. And as I mentioned before, it provides that vital food and habitat for pollinator species. But yeah, that's what I've got for today, and thanks for having me here.
Thank you, Justin. Next, we'll turn it over to Jenna Jarvis from St. Louis.
Hello. Yeah, you can go to the next slide, I guess, Barbara already. Yeah, I'm Jenna Jarvis. I am a stormwater engineer and the green infrastructure manager at the Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District. St. Louis is sort of in the middle of the Mississippi watershed, and we just manage the west side, the Missouri side of the Mississippi River, not on East St. Louis or the Illinois side. We're the fourth largest sewer system in the US. We have 5,000 miles of wastewater sewers, 3,000 miles of stormwater sewers, and 2,000 miles of combined sewers. So this green region is where the combined sewers are. We have the Mississippi watershed is a light green, and the River to Pear watershed is dark green, which also confluences the Mississippi. And then the rest of our, we cover about 90 municipalities. So that makes it more challenging because we are a separate entity sort of overseeing St. Louis, city of St. Louis, and the other municipalities all around it. Next slide, please. Okay, so our funding comes from a consent decree to manage sanitary and combined sewer overflow. So I showed the combined sewer area, and in case you're not familiar with what a combined sewer overflow is, in those older regions of the city and older St. Louis, there was one sewer pipe that mostly conveyed the wastewater, but then when it storms and it storms too much, it overflows, it fills the capacity and then will break over that dam and then flow into the Mississippi River. So we're trying to reduce that as much as possible through tunnels and green infrastructure. Next slide, please. All right, so we, around 2011 is when we signed our consent decree with the EPA to reduce these overflows. And they're talked about, they will be investing $6 billion. And at first they just were focusing on the Mississippi watershed combined sewer area. And it was agreed that we would spend $100 million of that on green infrastructure. And then later in 2019, they also added on the River to Pear watershed. This is all water quality based and CO2 reduction based. So now we have a $125 million budget to spend by the end of 2034 on green infrastructure. And at the beginning of the project, MSD built about 14 rain gardens and bioretention basins on vacant property that we could find within the city of St. Louis. But then it moved to more reimbursement based on private property. Let's see. Right. So hopefully by the end of 2034, the total goal is to reduce the gallons going into the Mississippi by 100 and 117, no more than that, 107 million gallons. And then we also have our tunnel projects that will also capture more millions and billions of gallons. Okay, next slide, please. So we already went through a lot of examples, but here's the slide that I usually use, examples of green infrastructure. Mostly we see rain gardens. Our grant does provide for green roofs or pervious surfaces or those curb bump outs that Justin showed as well. Next slide. One question that we get a lot is we cover wetlands and forest and stream restoration. And those are, I would consider those green stormwater assets, but this grant doesn't just cover wetlands. It has to provide extra storage in those storm events. And then trees are helpful for managing stormwater, but our grant won't pay for just trees. It has to be in a bioretention basin or along with some other flood and landscaping management. Next slide. And so New Orleans is probably more porous, but we have a lot of clay soil in Missouri. So this is just going to depend on your city and organization and also your geology. But we always require a perforated under drain in our bioretention basins. and some gravel. So they'll dig out some of the clay and existing soil and put in these gravel beds, bioretention soil, and then with the under drain. So that way you're not getting standing water or pooling or causing any mosquito problems. You want that water to fill the bioretention basin and eventually and store it and then flow out if it has to, or also drain within 2 days. This is more of the engineering side of it, but just think about that for your city. You'll have different design standards most likely. Next slide, please. So we also offer two types of large grants. Development review is kind of as Justin mentioned as well. We do have requirements on developers. If they develop over an acre, they need to put in some sort of stormwater management, and that applies all throughout the MSD service area. But for the grants in the CSO region, we can reimburse for bioretention, and that's up to $180,000 per acre treated. So, if someone's putting in a 1 acre parking lot and that all drains into a rain garden and is stored there, that can be reimbursed for $180,000. And then we also have our annual call grants in October, and that is more competitive. We've seen some applications and work with Greenprint partners on some of these and RES for some new technologies, or if it's a more expensive project, we will rank the applications that come in and provide some competitive grant funding. Okay, what's on the next slide? Oh yeah, so we also provide small grants to homeowners. The slide used to make more sense, but now because it had different dollar amounts per different watershed, but now they're all the same. We decided to make them all the same. So anywhere in the MSD service area, whether it's MS4, the separate system, or in the combined sewer system, people can apply for $4,000 to install a rain garden on their home, or also put in a rain barrel or permeable patio, or $10,000 for institution. So we've seen some more churches or nonprofits go for that grant if they don't want to pay for the engineering fees and the review process for the larger grants, for the developer level grants. We don't include these in our CSO volume reduction count, but we work with Missouri Botanical Garden on these, and they had a researcher say that they added up all the hundreds and thousands of grants we've given out over the last 10 years, that they think it has covered 17 Walmarts worth of stormwater captured. So that's pretty exciting to see that. All right, next slide. Okay, so here's just some examples of small grants. This was a side lot that might have just been turf or maybe a drive area before. Now it's mulch and native plants with some gravel to help provide stormwater management on this property. Next slide. I think it's a more small grant slide. So yes, here's a small permeable patio that someone installed, and then a cistern. And sometimes we'll see the rain. I think botanical gardens require some sort of planting to go along with their barrels or the permeable patio. So there'll have to be some sort of native plants, as Justin mentioned, to provide for that habitat and the co-benefits. Next slide. All right, so to date, we have managed 351 acres of stormwater area and estimated to reduce the CSO by 81 million gallons already, and we've spent about $66 million. So we should surpass our goals before we get to the $100 million spent. So that's really exciting to see how much can we manage on this budget. And then the River to Pear watershed, we've already managed 83 drainage acres for an estimated reduction of 8 million gallons annually and spent 11.4 million. So I've been working with a lot of partners on saying, hey, we only have 8 years left. By the time these sometimes get planned, designed, constructed, and reimbursed, it could be close. So we're working with a lot of partners, talking to different parks, talking to different neighborhood plans on what they want to see, how we can get these implemented. Okay, next slide, please. Oh, here's just that same thing, but in a more fun graphic format. So you can see that we're really close on our Mississippi impervious areas treated, and we still have more money to spend. Next slide is just River to Pear, same metrics. And we actually added on more to this because we were doing so well. They said, hey, let's just capture more drainage areas. So I think then one of our CD modifications, we added on more drainage areas. So hopefully we meet that goal. We were on track, we were surpassing it, and now we have more to manage. Next slide, please. Okay, I think here are just some examples. So this was a recently completed project with Greenprint partners. Cardinal Glennon is a local children's hospital, and they have a lot of parking lots, and they wanted to take out some of that asphalt and then put in rain gardens. So I think you can sort of see two in this photo, and these are new, so the native plants are new. and hopefully they're well maintained by Cardinal Glennon staff and won't get full of weeds. But I think there are 4 total on this site that have just been completed. Next slide. Oh, this was a fun one. So the Cortex is an innovation district in St. Louis that's still being constructed. They're always adding new innovation hubs and new tech businesses. But the bottom right picture is I took from Google Maps from 2011 when it was more of an abandoned warehouse in this big parking lot. And you can see the transformation to now we've put in, you can't really see the actual bioretention basin, but they've added that near the brick building and more lawn and seating areas. And they have food trucks there for all of the people who now work there in the innovation district. And they are required to put in, we have a deal with them they have to spend $5.1 million on green infrastructure because they're sort of upstream of a problem area. So we said, you can't just put more pervious or impervious surface here. You'll have to manage all of that. Next slide. Oh, this was a fun park project. So this actually helped us meet our acreage goals in the park. I think it managed 38 acres in this one large city park. They did a stream restoration project, but our portion was more for the 5 bioretention basins that surround the stream. So they did recirculate the water, make it a nice play feature, as you can see on the right. So that's fun. But our funds went to the rain gardens to manage the runoff from just mostly turf grass, which doesn't soak in stormwater as much as the bioretention basins. And if they use fertilizer in the park, I don't know how they manage their lawn, but this will help capture that to provide water quality before it goes into our sewer system. I think, next slide, please. Oh, this is in the same park. So they do a lot of downstream issues. So when they added these new basketball courts, they were required to manage the runoff from the basketball courts. So some rain gardens were also put in next to 2 new basketball courts. I went out there again this fall. They were kind of dandelions took over. So again, the park staff, parks are usually great to partner with because they do have good maintenance staff, and they'll just have to go in there and maybe do some weeding soon and add new plants. Next slide, please. Well, this was a really exciting community development project in our Cherokee Street Community Improvement District. It was an abandoned building that then got torn down and then was vacant for a while. And some neighbors put up a basketball hoop and just poured this asphalt pad that you see on the left. And that was around 2015. I think they did that so that the kids had somewhere to play. And then they wanted to work on giving them better shade, work on some of the stormwater problems on the site. So we provided a grant for, it was a pretty amazing project. So they have a pervious asphalt basketball court now. And if the next slide, Barbara, you can see this neat shade structure, which I really like because it utilized the chain link fence as a really neat shade structure in this urban park. And they also put in permeable pavers. Again, maintenance is huge, and people can pay to have their name on a paver, and it'll pay to help upkeep this little pocket park and basketball space. This was pretty expensive per acre. It was maybe a quarter acre lot, and a lot of money went into this, but I think it was very beneficial for the community. Next slide. This one is also recently completed. Again, we have a lot of vacancy issues in portions of St. Louis. So some houses were abandoned. You can see this white structure is one of the oldest water towers in the US and the one of 3 remaining standing in St. Louis, I believe. So it's an old neighborhood. This block had homes demolished. And then we've worked with the Green City Coalition in the city of St. Louis and some Washington University students to create this new park space. There's walking paths now, the shade structure, and there is a rain garden. I don't think I even have a picture of the rain garden portion of it, but it was just a really neat community project with a lot of partners. It kind of runs downhill, and they wanted to add an amphitheater. So the rain garden will capture any extra runoff from the new amphitheater and walking paths. Next slide. And I think that's it. So yeah, these are some of our partners with the Green City Coalition. It's us and Missouri Department of Conservation, the Development Corporation and City of St. Louis. Do I have other slides? Next slide. Oh, yep, that's all my slides.
Perfect.
Thank you.
All right, well, Alexandra, I think we did what you asked us to do in the time that you asked us to do it. So give us a gold star.
That's very easy to do, Barbara. This has been absolutely fantastic. I've been taking lots of notes just because it's super, super fascinating. So I do see there's 2 questions in the Q&A. I am going to take just a second to ask one question. It sounds like from all the different examples that have been provided, it sounds like been a variety of partners, private sector, community groups, nonprofits that have been part of these projects. And I'm kind of curious, like, how do these projects typically come about? Like, do the community groups come to you? Do you go to the community groups? And then once you have one project done, is that a model for other communities to follow in future projects? So this is a question to all the panelists.
I can go first. We see it both ways. So we do see community groups applying for the grants, or also I've been doing a lot of outreach for the parks. Like I mentioned, we have a lot more acreage to cover in River to Pear. So I'm trying to find park partners or any entities that want to implement these, and we'll help them with the grant funding. So both ways.
I'll say in New Orleans, in my personal experience, it comes more from the community-based organizations because they're so hyper specific and based on their locations and their own usually grant funded like research of they'll put cameras down the pipes and see what the infrastructure is really doing in that one spot, because again, classically our aging infrastructure has not been maintained, the funding is sparse, it's been bounced around jurisdiction wise, it's a mess. So in my personal experience, it's the community groups that come forth and we'll see what we can do as far as providing better paths to make it happen, either a partnership and a grant that requires some kind of municipal government agency partner, or just being able to focus our maintenance efforts on that area since they've already done the work to do it. But on the bigger scale from the city, they got a couple of pretty large grants from the federal level, both from HUD and hazard mitigation FEMA grants. And those are years ago based on a larger study that, again, a more private national firm worked on. So it flip-flops there, but they're all building blocks to keep going.
On the reverse end of the, we're a community-based organization. We do a lot of work with several of the municipalities here. Grace is our favorite. But a lot of times the work will emanate at the community level, and then we will work with those community partners, and then I'll pick up the phone and I'll call Grace and say, hey, we've got this idea. Can you give me some background on what the system looks like there? And then we just start building momentum. And yes, those projects have a tendency to build upon themselves and open up avenues for other projects with other community groups around the city and other departments.
And I'll just add to, because a lot of our GSI implementation is driven by street reconstruction projects, but our community groups are very supportive of it, generally speaking. And then we also have watershed management organizations in Minnesota that we'll collaborate with, and they'll provide grant funding for projects that they see like significant opportunities for improving the water quality in their watersheds. And so, yeah, we'll get some support from them as well.
And I would simply add that, there are plenty of examples across our membership where Philadelphia comes to mind. The projects are certainly community driven, but also very driven in terms of where resources get spent by GIS analysis that looks at where's the heat, where's the flooding, and where are the disadvantaged communities, and really trying to make the most of public dollars to kill a bunch of birds with one stone. So if we can manage flooding, manage urban heat island impacts, and take a vacant lot and, yes, put a rain garden or bioretention on it, but also add maybe a pergola and a swing set and a mural, we've really done something really terrific. And you see that throughout Philadelphia. It's sort of amazing when you walk through some of the more older, more disadvantaged neighborhoods. They've really, really made a strong effort to make public dollars go as far as they can to so that GSI is a a rising tide that lifts a lot of ships.
One quick follow-up, and then I will kick it over to the Q&A questions. But in terms of elected leaders, so local elected leaders, mayors, if you've had the chance to work with tribal leaders as well, if that's within your jurisdiction, are they engaged in these processes and projects? And if so, have they raised any questions or concerns in developing or implementing these projects?
Don't work directly with the mayor. There's 1,000 City of St. Louis employees, but we have a city sustainability officer. And I think thanks to the help with the accelerator through the leadership exchange, it really did help align more of the different departments because, well, we had a tornado last year as well. So talking to the tornado planning people, the flood planning people, the transportation people, just trying to get everybody aligned. But yeah, not directly with the mayor, but there's leaders within the city. And I think that's interesting. I was gonna Oh yeah, I was going to answer Juliana's question too, but I think people talk about community as a blob, but there might be the one person who submits the application, but then the person who lives next to it doesn't understand. It's like, why is a weed growing in front of my house? So it's just um, there's not necessarily fighting a community, but there's some people who may not like it or don't understand it. The same thing in the city, like the transportation people need certain turn radiuses for the semis, which we've had when we're trying to put in rain gardens on certain streets.
Yeah, we have that question really mixes in with Juliana's because yes, on the high levels, because the general consensus is the movement towards we have a huge climate crisis in New Orleans that most people acknowledge, but they still think we can build enough bigger pipes to get out of it. But it's the outreach of changing that. On the political side, their acknowledgement of it. Our past mayor was very forward thinking of it. She created an office of the mayor for resiliency, which ended up project managing those big grants that had been won during that process. Our new mayor is focusing on adjacent things, but we still have an Office of Resilience that is doing a lot of that work and is trying to keep all the threads together. But we also have those same problems where our Department of Transportation at state level, they have their setbacks, even though the highways that run through the city are super narrow and there's no room for their urban setbacks. But that's another event. And it's more the crossover of people that may not live where that project is and don't connect the dots of, oh, well, that tree over there, it's nice, and I bought my house because this street has a lot of trees and landscaping and it's taken care of. And but why is that so important? Is that really so important? And it's connecting those dots that it's like an unconscious bias of it. I had a past coworker that did a good one where we decided to have a meeting outside in the sun until everybody was like, why aren't we in the shade? I'm like, well, because we should plant some trees, shouldn't we? So, it's a little of both. It's always meeting the person that you have to convince a little bit and open up their eyes and keep pushing.
Yeah, I would add that mayors are hugely important. Elected officials are hugely important to this effort. You're never going to get around the face of that clock that I showed you without them, because you're never going to get the policies you need, the money you need, the support you need from across departments, all the community leaders on board. And so that leadership is incredibly important. And I would highlight the city of Boston, where the mayor felt so strongly about the value of green stormwater infrastructure that she appointed the first cabinet level GSI czar for the city of Boston. And that person was on our board until recently. Yeah.
I'd say too, our elected officials are generally very supportive of implementing GSI, especially because it meets so many of our city goals that we've outlined in our planning documentation. I'd say the biggest thing that we get pushback on is just like taking parking away. Um, and a lot of it too comes down to communication. Like people want to know why a rain garden has to go in front of their house and not somewhere else. Um, but typically once they understand like what our planning guidelines are and like how we came to that decision, about why they're placed where they are, I'd say generally people are pretty understanding, about that. And then they're also just really curious, like what our maintenance plans are, because they want these to look good if they're going to be right in front of their house. Um, so yeah, we do a lot of communication about that sort of thing very early on in the project process to help get as many people on board as we can.
It sounds like in listening to each of you respond to those questions and kind of link Juliana's question with mine, that there's still a lot of education to be done. Like there's this kind of, at least there's a curiosity instead of an hostility, which I used to hear a lot about many years ago. When you talk about GI, there was just an instant hostility to it. But it seems like there's a greater curiosity and at least interest in learning, probably because there are so many projects that people can see the benefits from, or it's been in some other part of the city that a community member has seen, and now it's being brought to their community. So it sounds like a lot of progress has been made in this.
Yeah.
Um,
I just wanted to point out, of course, everybody on this panel understands and knows this, but the more you involve the community in all the processes, I mean, even the construction schedule, and letting people know you're going to be how we're going to work on this displacement, where you're going to park, what's the schedule going to be, trying not to interrupt their daily routines, but also, like you said, educating them on the benefits of what we're doing in their community, but also, really having them in the weeds, for lack of a better phrase, on how this whole project is going to evolve over time.
You're absolutely right.
I think that's actually a great place for me to say I'd love to do, just to wrap this all up, as a kind of a lightning round for each of our panelists and Barbara to say, to kind of give their advice. If you were advising a local leader on how to bring greater green infrastructure to their community, what would be your advice?
Who wants to go first? I mean, for me personally, I would highlight a website that we partnered with the Nature Conservancy and an economist called One Water Econ. It's called gsiimpacthub.org. And you can go there, and there are all kinds of tools for valuing the co-benefits of green stormwater infrastructure. And for most people, you can speak from the heart about the value of the co-benefits in improving air quality and reducing urban heat, and providing habitat for pollinators, etc. But so many of the people you really need to convince, you need to speak from the wallet, right? You need to talk about the economics of this. And so on that website, you can use this tool that we've developed, put some very simple data in, and see over 30-year time what is the economic value of those co-benefits. And for in many cases, you're getting 6, 7, 8 times the cost of a project back in 30 years because of, improved health outcomes, for example, the value of those improved health outcomes. So that's what I would do.
Yeah, the the money part of it and the metrics part of it are what is needed to convince the engineers and the risk managers and the legal department. So luckily, again, there have been better tools that have analyzed this and put some numbers to it. So your cost benefit ratio actually includes green infrastructure as an asset and not just something that's not measurable. iTree is a really great one to do that for trees specifically, especially when you have such a historic tree canopy like we do, to assign actual value to it and how much it costs, because you can't buy a 200-year-old tree. So how do you put money assigned to it types of things. But also, even it's probably not possible to have everybody, do a field trip to see one of these things, but to experience it in person is something. So if there was a way to maybe grant funded or a pocket or do something, a demonstration project to really have all those pieces. When we were putting in ours, our program is also consent decree forced in the
Yeah, get
inception.
sued.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was also going to say. Like, tell
Okay,
somebody to sue you because then you have to do it. But part of our plan was like the last project I did, we put out an RFP. We said we want to see 5 different types of green infrastructure. And we want you to monitor their how they do and also the water quality that comes out of, like, figure out a design where you can pull samples before and after of these different types of GI. Let's make it scientific. Let's learn from it, something that we can build off of. And also if it's replicable so that, other stormwater lots in the city can just pull that plant palette or pull that design, start getting that common design, like Justin is doing.
And I would just, if I did lightning round, just partner, partner, partner. If you have
Mhm.
local zoos, gardens, yeah, and departments of conservation, all the people who are already doing the work. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, from the community-based level, it's inclusion, inclusion, inclusion. Give the community a real stake in the project because it is their community. And if you get pushback, sometimes you get pushback and you have to alter your plans. And you got to be okay with that when you're working with the community because they're the one there, it's their community. But educate all the way along the process, but really empower the community to take their own action in their community.
Yeah, and I'll jump back to the money thing as well. Both with city staff and the community, they want to know what the investment is that we're making with green infrastructure because it's not always evident what those triple bottom line benefits are going to be whenever we're putting green infrastructure on our projects. And we still have to maintain these over the long term, and that also takes money. So really emphasizing like all of those additional benefits can be really helpful. And then again with the community, like just bringing them in. And yesterday we did a community planting event with members of the Red Lake Nation where we got to add some culturally significant plants to our rain garden. So that was really cool. And I feel like it also just helps people to learn like what are these native species, like what are we putting into our rain gardens and why they're important. But yeah, money and community.
Well, thank you so much for that. I think between your presentations and just those kinds of lightning round suggestions for local leaders, I think this is going to be a great resource for local leaders, tribal leaders, as well as community members to think through how they can bring green infrastructure to their communities and make it more feasible for them. So I just want to give each of you a big thank you for sharing all this wealth of knowledge and answering our questions. And with that, we'll close the session. And Barbara, also want to give you a huge shout out for organizing this. Thank you so much. It wouldn't have been possible without you. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Alexandra, and thank you, panelists, and Todd. It was nice to have you with us. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.